I think that sometimes with introverts and just with who we are, environment matters. Environment really matters. And we can get these labels placed on us unfairly because people don't just take the time to really ask the question, why is this person not talking? Why are they being quiet? Now, in some cases, it could just be, hey, I just don't feel like talking right now. I don't have anything to say and I'm chilling. I'm good. And that can be the case too. And that's where it gets to where people don't even understand that sometimes it's not that the introvert is being quiet because something is wrong. It's just, I just don't have anything to say in the moment. And that's fine. Like, there shouldn't be any issue with that. You shouldn't think something is wrong because of that. But a lot of times, if we get quiet, nothing is wrong. It's actually that we were really intrigued and we're really interested, and we're just digging deeper into our mind, thinking about what was just said. Hello, and welcome to the Quiet Voice Fearless Mind podcast, a show where we help introverts to reach their full potential. And in today's show, I want to talk about a label that a lot of introverts get that honestly is annoying. It's at least annoying for me, and it might be for you if you're listening. But a lot of introverts get labeled as quiet, right? And what I want to talk about today is, what are the reasons that introverts get quiet? Like, what are the reasons that when we're in conversations, sometimes people just don't hear us talking and they think something is wrong? Well, what's the reason that that happens? No one really asks that question. I know at times in the past with me, I'll just be in a group and there's conversation going on, and I'll get labeled as, oh, man, Terrence, yeah, you kind of quiet, you kind of shy, huh? And this and that. But no one ever asks why. And I started to think about it, and there's some really common reasons for me why I'll typically get that way. And after talking to so many fellow introverts and having so many conversations, I realized that a lot of the reasons are the same. And so I want to dig into that and really talk about that some here today. And really quick, a quick story I wanted to share. So there were two people, and I don't want to share any names, obviously, on the show here, but let's just say two leaders that I worked with in the past, okay? And these two people were in very similar roles on the same team that I was on. So they were leaders on this particular team and on this program. And I'm going to try really hard to not say any names. So the first person was, I would say, a chronic overtalker. And when I say overtalker, I mean the person that, do you know anybody in your personal life or in your work life where they're just going to get their thought out, and if somebody else starts talking, they're going to just overtalk that person. They're going to interrupt them, or they're just going to just keep talking, like that person where they give off that vibe, like regardless of what anyone else is saying in a room or on a call, they have to be the one that's heard. Like, do you know that person, anyone like that? Well, this was this particular person, okay? And their meetings were a lot of times very contentious. I have been in meetings where at times they literally would get into it with somebody in the meeting and it would turn into a shouting match. Um, they just were not, it just wasn't good energy. That's the best way I can put it. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that in a work environment or in a personal environment where somebody just, they have to be the one that's heard, and then if somebody else comes in and matches that energy, right, then it literally is going to be like a fight. I mean, that's what it's going to be. And sometimes what I've noticed with a lot of fellow introverts is, in those situations, a lot of us may shut down. A lot of us may shut down. And the funny thing is, there are some people that would see that situation and they would assume that the person that shut down, well, they're just quiet, or they just, they just didn't have anything to say. Well, that was completely not the case. And I'm going to get into that here a little bit later. But that was the first leader. Okay. So for that particular person, that person likely viewed me as quiet because when I saw that environment and when I saw the scenario of what I was in and when I realized it for what it was, I realized I don't see a place for myself in this situation. I don't see a place for myself in this environment because my voice isn't heard anyway. So that was really my view, honestly, of that person. Now, on the flip side, I'm going to tell you about a second leader, someone else that was on the team. So this person, I contributed a lot in their meetings. I talked pretty frequently. I mean, I was a person that I would share my thoughts a lot. I would express my opinion a lot. And we had very good, productive conversation between me, that person, and the rest of our team. Well, why was that? It was because this other leader, their approach to things was a lot more collaborative. Now, granted, they were in a, high leadership position on our team and everything like that. But the way that they would handle themselves and the way that they would operate, it was very much like there was a problem or an issue to talk about, and they would ask people's thoughts. They would ask people's opinions, right? They wouldn't come in and try to step on anybody's point. They wouldn't try to overtalk anybody. They wouldn't do any of that. Now, they would have their opinions as well and they would express those, but it was never done in a way that felt combative or felt negative or anything like that. It was a completely different energy being in their meeting versus being in that first person's meeting. Okay. And there's something about that when you feel heard where you feel more comfortable expressing yourself. You feel like you're understood. You feel like there's just a better camaraderie there, right? And so that's just two polar opposite situations. Now, that second leader, if you were to ask them about Terrence and about who I was, they would probably have something very different to say than the first person. But it's because with the first person, they never really got to experience who I was or my true thoughts on things because I just didn't talk that much, to be honest. But with the second leader, I did. So I think that sometimes with introverts and just with who we are, environment matters. Environment really matters. And we can get these labels placed on us unfairly because people don't just take the time to really ask the question, why is this person not talking? Why are they being quiet? Now, in some cases, it could just be, hey, I just don't feel like talking right now. I don't have anything to say and I'm chilling. I'm good. And that can be the case too. And that's where it gets to where people don't even understand that sometimes it's not that the introvert is being quiet because something is wrong. It's just, I just don't have anything to say in the moment. And that's fine. Like, there shouldn't be any issue with that. You shouldn't think something is wrong because of that. But sometimes there are some specific reasons why we may get quiet or we may shut down. And I want to talk about a few of those because I feel like a lot of us deal with these. But again, so many people don't even ask the question of why. So I actually had posted 3 short videos on this on my social media earlier this week. And so that's one reason I wanted to cover these in more of a long form format so that I can get into more detail on each of them as opposed to the 60-second clips that I post on IG and post on TikTok. So I want to get into each one of these, and I would love to hear your feedback. Like, let me know in the comments for the show what you think. Like, can you resonate with any of the 3 that I'm going to mention? Do you ever shut down when these things happen, and can you understand them? Introverts are too quiet and too weak to lead. Have you ever heard this before? Well, my name is Terrence, and for years as an introvert, I didn't think I had what it took to be a leader. What I learned was being an introvert is my superpower. If you want to learn how to have success as an introvert, then go to quietvoicefearlessleader.com to learn more. So one of the first reasons that introverts can get quiet during a conversation is when we're trying to assess who this person is. We're trying to assess this person. A lot of times, this will happen in a new environment or around new people. So, when I'm in a situation and I'm having a conversation whether it be one on one or most definitely if it's in a group dynamic, I'm typically going to be doing a lot more listening than I'm doing talking. And that's opposite for many people, especially for many extroverts, where they're going to be doing a lot of talking because they're trying to have back and forth. They're trying to, that's just how they engage. Where with me, somebody meeting me for the first time, I could definitely see where they would just say, they would assume, oh, Terrence is quiet or he's quieter, right? But a lot of it's because I'm just trying to get to know that person. And I feel a way that you get to know somebody is from listening to them. I think that I'm kind of like a natural interviewer. Maybe that's why I gravitate to having a podcast because I'm curious about people. I'm very curious about people. I like to hear their story, like more than just where are you from, where were you born, what's your name? Like, I'm curious about people's story. I've just always been that way. I'm fascinated by, so, hey, what do you do? Well, why do you do that? What led you to do that? You know, um, I like to hear the background of people and truly listen, you know? So I think for a lot of people with introverts, we're assessing somebody, we're listening to them, we're trying to also feel them out, we're trying to feel out people's intentions, like, I mean, there are a lot of people, you would be amazed at some of the things that an introvert can sense. A lot of times in a new situation, I can sense if somebody's being genuine with me or if they're being fake. I mean, I just can. I don't know how to explain it. I feel like a lot of introverts have that superpower where we can really tell and assess somebody's intention, whether for good or for bad. So don't try to get over on an introvert because a lot of times we're going to be able to sense it out anyway because we're sitting there and we're listening and we're just assessing everything and we're reading you. I mean, that's honestly what a lot of us are doing, especially if it's a new situation. So a lot of times if we're quiet, again, it's deeper than the fact that we're just being quiet. We're in a new environment or it's a new person. We're assessing who that person is. We're assessing the situation, assessing everything around us, and taking all that in. So that's a lot of times why in that situation we might be quiet. So another reason that an introvert might get quiet during a conversation, and this just recently happened to me, is somebody said something that was intriguing or something that interested us. And so now we're thinking about it. Just that simple. Here a few days ago, we were on a vacation and was talking to, a friend of ours and, was just having a conversation about life, kids, family, everything like that. And we were talking about the fact as we're actually sitting in this huge arcade that we took the kids to, and they're playing video games, going on rides, doing the thing that kids do, having a good time. And he made a comment that really made me think. He was like, "Man, I remember when I was coming up, like we didn't have anything like this, nothing on this level." And so me and him started talking about that, and then he made a comment like, "I wonder sometimes if we're spoiling our kids." And he said it, and I just kind of paused. I didn't really say anything, but I didn't say anything because I was thinking, and then literally that was on my mind for a good part of the day. I was like, man. So he said it, and then I started thinking to myself, I wonder if I do spoil my kids. I started thinking about my upbringing. I started thinking about, while there would, I mean, I do not have things to complain about with my upbringing. I mean, my parents, I lived a good life. I do not have things to complain about. I mean, when I think about some of the trouble and the situations that different friends of mine had coming up and stories that you hear about kids and things that they don't have and all of that, I have nothing to complain about from my upbringing. So that's not why I'm saying this. But I think about my upbringing and I look at my kids' upbringing and some of the things that they're doing and exposed to, and just everything from technology to the huge arcade facility we were in a few days ago with a water park and all of this stuff. Like, I'm like, man, are we spoiling our kids? We want them to have a good life. We want them to enjoy life. But if this is all they see, are they going to be in this bubble where they feel like that's the world, where they feel like, oh, being able to, just randomly on a weekend travel to this other city and visit this water park and arcade and everything, that's just a normal occurrence. I started thinking about that. And I started thinking about the day to day and just every week, what are they exposed to? What are we exposing them to? Are they exposed enough to people that are less fortunate? Are they exposed enough to see that there are people in this world that don't have what they have? And if they don't have that exposure, then how are they going to grow up? Are they going to grow up entitled? Are they going to grow up thinking, oh, well, this is just the way life is supposed to be? I'm supposed to get this. I'm supposed to get that. All of these thoughts were running through my mind. And this was just, one comment that he said. Like he said this one comment, and literally I was thinking about this for a good part of the day. And I got kind of quiet after he said it because I was thinking. So sometimes somebody can say something to an introvert and it can spark our brain to go into this completely different direction. It's not that anything is wrong. It's like we were having a conversation, somebody said something interesting, and now we're being introspective and we're thinking about that thing. And I think a lot of times for the person that's more of an extrovert, they might have heard something that made them intrigued and they're going to more so talk it out, right? So as opposed to getting quiet, that may turn into a back and forth conversation, which, by the way, for introverts, the same thing can happen. I mean, I'm not saying that every time someone says something interesting to us, we just sit there and we don't say anything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that at times when we're really in deep thought, we might just be sitting there because we're in deep thought. And so it's causing us to really think deeply, to go inward. And now we're thinking as opposed to having a back and forth conversation. But a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people don't understand. And I guess I get it. I mean, if I try to put myself in the shoes of someone else, and if a conversation is happening and somebody said something, and now the other person is just sitting there, maybe I'm thinking, oh, maybe they're not interested, or I don't know what the other person could be thinking, right? But what I do know is that as an introvert, that happens. That happens sometimes. And so, hopefully more people will begin to realize this. But a lot of times, if we get quiet, nothing is wrong. It's actually that we were really intrigued and we're really interested, and we're just digging deeper into our mind, thinking about what was just said. And a third reason that introverts can get quiet during a conversation is actually the opposite of the previous one that I said, where if we get in a conversation and we're not intrigued, or the conversation is boring for some reason, and we just completely zone out, then we might get quiet. Okay. And I want to make something very clear here. There's a difference between small talk and talk that's surface level. Okay. So I think that in the introvert community, a lot gets said about small talk, right? And it's become this, buzz phrase that a lot of us use where we talk about conversations that are just conversations we don't want to have, right? But I actually think the more that I've thought through this, we have to be clear that there's a difference between small talk and talk that's surface level. Okay. I really think the problem that introverts have is really we have a problem with surface level conversation. Because, like, small talk, and I've had some people in my comments ask me about this. It's like, well, how do you get to know somebody that you don't know? Right. So, you're at a function and someone comes up and they ask you your name and they ask, well, what do you do or where are you from? Or these different things that some of us would classify as small talk. But in reality, that person might just be trying to get to know us. Right. And in that case, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, if somebody is being very genuine and they're genuine in wanting to get to know us, or they're asking about us and we engage in a back and forth conversation, I don't view that as there's anything wrong. Now, surface level, I would say that's, I think, what annoys an introvert. Surface level is when like you literally can sense and can tell when someone has nothing to say. you have nothing to say, and there's conversation just to have conversation. I mean, it's basically the when you're on hold talking to a customer service person with some company, and you're sitting there and there's that moment when they're trying to look up your information or do something and it's quiet on the phone, and they just ask you about the weather in your city. Like, they don't care about the weather in your city. You don't care about the weather in your city. But you know they're asking the question because they don't want it to be quiet on the phone. And there's nothing wrong with quiet on the phone, but for them it is, right? And so that's, I think, what's more annoying for us. And so those kind of conversations get very draining, and we'll often get quiet in those scenarios because we just don't feel like there's anything genuine to talk about there. And that is something, again, that people don't understand. A lot of people just assume, oh, this person's quiet, they don't have anything to say. Well, yeah, in that moment I don't, because you're talking about something that's very surface level, and I'm not intrigued, I'm not interested, and that's just where I am. So a lot of introverts in that situation will get quiet as well. So, listen, I hope you enjoyed the episode today. And I would encourage you to share this episode with an extrovert, or share this episode with a fellow introvert that you feel like they don't understand maybe why they get quiet sometimes. Maybe they've never heard these three reasons. Maybe they get quiet for another reason and they have a different perspective, but make sure to share this episode, because I think it's, again, important for people that don't understand the introvert experience to try to at least understand it more. That way, when we have conversations back and forth, we have different engagements, there's not so much of this just lack of understanding of people's reactions to things, right? When people aren't talking, when people are in a scenario where it's a work discussion, it's a group conversation going on, and people may not be talking as much, there's an understanding there of why. Well, it could be because this person was intrigued by something that was said, and now they're thinking. It could be that this conversation is very surface level and this person has just totally zoned out, right? I mean, it could be so many different things. And so it's important, I think, for people to understand that. And that way we can just all get along, we can all just be on the same page. It's like, hey, we don't have to all approach conversation the same way. That's perfectly okay. It doesn't mean that one person is wrong or one is right. We just all might operate differently, and that's okay. So remember, there's only one you, and there's only one life. So make it count. God bless.